wide receiver, week 3. Jake Seeley with us from The Athletic. Just moving over here, trying to figure out if there's anyone that is a priority at the high end. Last week, Twitter told me that Devontae Adams was the priority, so I was enjoying that expensive wide receiver fade when he was like 30% owned. Is there a guy at the top end this week, Jake, who's the must play, the Devontae Adams must play that everyone's going to jam in and be disappointed?
Well, that's going to be disappointing. I feel like everybody's going to jam in Calvin Ridley, and it's understandable. I will say this: if you look at so far, somebody gets left out, and this is what we knew. The same thing with the Cowboys. Somebody has to be left out. Cowboys offense so far, Gallup's been completely the one left out. They just replaced Jarwin with Schultz, and he's been left out again. With the Falcons, week 1, it was Hayden Hurst. He came back in week 2, which left out Julio Jones. So everybody's going to be on Ridley, understandably. I think a lot of people, you're not talking high end, but you're talking about Russell Gage is probably going to be in a lot of lives because his price still isn't into the relevancy of what we're talking about here. But I feel like Julio Jones, for me, I'm going to have a whole lot of Julio Jones. Like, just because this feels like the Julio Jones week. He did it in week 1, but this feels like the Julio Jones, like everybody's pissed off. Everybody's like, oh my God, this is why I never want Julio Jones, and the low ownership. And I just feel like unless the Bears just crap the bed, the Falcons are going to. So, gosh. But the obvious one is the first one. It's DeAndre Hopkins. It's everybody's. It's going to be Kyler Murray, DeAndre Hopkins, probably the highest stack of all of them.
Yeah, I think that Hopkins is definitely going to be popular. Julio at 7,400. Yeah, sure. If you're looking for your 120 on 9 catches and no touchdowns, I think that's perfect.
He scores touchdowns.
Great value there, man. Great value if you're spending 7,400 for a guy. No, I'm trying to play to your narrative, right? We'll get him at like 5%, and then he can have his Julio eruption spot, and you'll win all the money, man. That's the way to do it.
He has, but he scores like 5-6 touchdowns every single year. It was 1 year people want to remember those 3 touchdowns. 1 year.
Didn't he like lead the league in receiving, and then he had like 3 touchdowns? Something
yes,
like that.
Yeah, 3 touchdowns that year. But I think he averages 6 touchdowns a year. Actually, I think even including that 1 year, because he had 2 seasons at 8, if I'm remembering correctly.
Mm-hmm. That's an interesting. I don't know. I guess I love the biases overall. It like makes me really happy with all of this stuff that we're doing. Adam Thielen 6,900, Amari Cooper 6,500. What do we think about these Dallas wide receivers, anyways? Does he just come back to it at some point? Gallup is going to be the guy. We just haven't quite seen it yet. Like the air yards have been there, all of those things. I think that Gallup is one that I at least have some interest in. Let's see what his price is for this week, but.
Is Gallup under Lamb? I'm kind of curious.
Gallup is $100 more than Lamb. So if anyone's listening to this on the podcast later, Gallup is 5,500. CD Lamb is at 5,400. So that's an interesting one overall. What do you think about the 2 Dallas guys?
So, like I said, so far, Gallup's been the one that's been completely left out. And that's concerning to me because, like I said, somebody has to get left out because you just don't have 4 options every single week. I was just talking about the Falcons and the situation there. And I'm looking, so routes run, Cooper has 79, Gallup has 76, and CD Lamb has 70, and yet Gallup has a 12% target share, and Lamb's up at 18%. Mm-hmm. That's the concern, and this is the concern I had going into the year. And you know what? This is another one where I actually just trust myself. You remember last year, I told everybody that like I had Lamar Jackson when I did my first run of projections. I had him at number 2 at quarterback. It's like, whoa, that's let me push him down, and I think he ended up like 7. This is one where I know it's 2 weeks, but I kind of wish I would have trusted my gut here. I went and I said, Gallup feels like the one that's going to get out because he's not quite ready for that attention. And if you're talking about defenses, I forget who said it. It's somebody smarter than me probably, and said that if you're looking at defenses sometimes, and this is actually kind of what happened in the Bills-Dolphins game, is that when you have a lesser talent, but they're kind of close, you put your best corner on the second guy and just completely wipe him from the game plan. And then, try to double cover to take, the first guy with a lesser corner, but double coverage.
Right.
And that's what happened with Parker. Parker scored because he was getting, lesser attention. White just took Williams out of the game plan. And I think that's what you're seeing teams doing so far. If you watch the first 2 games for the Cowboys, the attention is just like, let's get Gallup out of the equation, try to do our best with Cooper and CeeDee Lamb, and so far Cooper's just been unstoppable, and Lamb's been hit or miss. So that's why I'm legitimately concerned. Now, Gallup at that price makes it intriguing because I feel like nobody's going to want him, but I throw all that out there to say, like, I feel like this might be a recurring theme, like Gallup was going to be the one left out more than anybody.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I remember we used to talk about that a little bit with Julio back in the day. So like people are like, oh, he's not even being shadow covered, or maybe it's Richard Sherman doesn't leave the right side of the field, so Julio's not even going to see him. But then Julio ends up being double teamed by the rest of the guys, and then it ends up being someone like Sherman on the number 2 option. So that's a really good point. I think that overall, someone like CeeDee Lamb and his skill set, it makes sense that he's had a little bit of success out of the gate. Someone like Gallup, who might, maybe he's not quite ready to be breaking that type of coverage. So Amari's an interesting one at 6,500. That seems like somewhat of a stay away for me, but I do think that the Dallas guys overall are really interesting. But before we move on from wide receiver, anyone else that kind of stood out in terms of pricing overall?
So I love Slayton this week. Not
Nice.
just because Sterling Shepard's toe, so he's out for a couple weeks, and I think a lot of people are going to be thinking about Golden Tate. Here's the thing about the Steelers, and it's happened for the first 2 weeks, as we just saw, they're beatable deep with. They have basically nobody that can cover it. They also have injuries out there. You just mentioned Sherman is still out. You want big, deep threats, and I think that Slayton's in a big opportunity this week, especially with no Barkley.
That's interesting. So do you think that the line is going to be able to hold up long enough? I guess that we haven't really seen a ton in terms of San Francisco and the pressure that they normally bring. But my first question when we find a team that has a deep threat like this, it might be a little bit cheaper, that we think could see some more volume. Like, is it against a team that brings a lot of pressure? Does that offensive line do much to protect? So what are your thoughts on that in terms of being able to protect Danny Dimes for Slayton to even get downfield?
Well, so I was looking this morning, and the Giants actually aren't even in the 5 worst for time to throw. Ben Roethlisberger is one of the 5 worst in time to throw so far, along with Dwayne Haskins, and I forget the other 3 off the top of my head, but I know I looked specifically because I was looking for what you're talking about. The Giants' offensive line is not top 10, but it's holding up for what everybody's talking about. This also talking about starting a rookie, people that I didn't even know. I know the highlight of them trying to draw the Bears offside in the center, not even touching the ball. It's just the most embarrassing thing I've ever seen. The offensive line is holding up enough for Daniel Jones to get the ball down. And that's why hey, look, I'll happily be wrong with this. This is just set up perfectly if you're diving in deeper than just looking at the flat surface of this is an opportunity to where Slayton comes out with like $120 in it.
So diving a little bit deeper at the wide receiver position, again, if this is your first time on linemovement.com, check out the resources tab, NFL data table. I'll say this every single week until you guys start believing me. Weighted opportunity rating. This is a Josh Hermsmeyer stat, airyards.com. Be sure and check that out. Follow Josh on Twitter. Basically, it's a mixture between target share and target share of air yards. One of the most predictive things there is at picking wide receivers. So I'm almost always paying attention to this, trying to figure out which guys are still very underpriced. Mike Williams, Deontay Johnson, still very underpriced relative to their weighted opportunity rating. John Brown in there as well. Darius Slayton is the guy that I want to talk a little bit more about. 4,900. I know Jake mentioned him before, but we see it, and we talked about it with Sigmund Bloom as well. We see these guys where the target share, the target tree just gets so much smaller that Darius Slayton at 4,900 seems like a crazy good value to me personally. And the reason that I really like this is San Francisco cannot defend the deep ball. 31st in the league at defending deep passes. I think Slayton could end up being a really popular option at that price point, and probably for good reason. I like that one quite a bit. What do we think about Paris Campbell at 4,100? He's another guy that the air yards have been there. I think it's a really interesting play at 4,100. Do we like anyone more at the cheaper range? We've got some LaVisca talk in the chat as well. Woods revenge game versus Buffalo, unless White is covering him. That would be the one that... so I don't care a ton about wide receiver cornerback matchups. Tre'Davious White is one I do care about. That's for sure. Would I trade Fournette for Golladay? Absolutely. Absolutely, I would. Thanks for your question in the chat, Ben. Yeah, if anyone's watching this later on the YouTube channel, or maybe they're watching this in podcast form, we are live each and every Monday, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern time, but also Sunday mornings at 9:30. So check that out. Check out the description if you want to enjoy this in podcast form. Guys, just a reminder, ratings and reviews really help me out. We're trying to get the word out, kind of grow our community. We had about 500 people in chat on Sunday morning, which was just amazing. I want to try and get this up during the weekdays as well. We do a bunch of Q&A, a bunch of that sort of stuff. So Any other names you guys want me to, that's here right now, let's hear it. Any other names that you guys want me to go through in terms of wide receivers? Want to go a little bit deeper, right? So one of the other metrics I think is really important, yards per route run. You can take out some of the smaller samples here. Obviously, Chase Claypool is not someone we're interested in. Typically, you'll see some of the top names in the entire league kind of leading the way here. So Adam Thielen, Robert Woods, kind of in that 6K range. Anthony Miller, still 4,900. I don't hate Anthony Miller against Atlanta. I think that's a really strong play. Will Fuller, we'll see what happens to that injury. That did not look good. Robbie Anderson, we talked a little bit about him as well at 5,200. I think that one's interesting in terms of his yards per route run, very strong. DeAndre Hopkins, Julian Edelman. I know Jake talked about if you are going to be stacking up Cam, it's still probably Julian Edelman with him. So I could get down with that. 6,200 seems a little bit overpriced for me, but at least he's checking some boxes, right? Leading the way in terms of total routes, Stephon Diggs, John Brown, these Buffalo guys, like still underpriced. I kind of wish that we would have had a little bit more time to let people adapt to Stephon Diggs in this offense, but obviously that big game he just had, all the way up to 7K, pretty expensive. Calvin Ridley at 7,200 now. That's a tough price point for Calvin Ridley. Are the touchdowns going to continue? We'll see. We'll see. It's Mookie says he likes going back to Terry again this week. Is Terry on the main slate? I haven't seen him on any of these. He should be. He is. Here we go. Terry McLaurin, 5,900. That's not out of range for Terry McLaurin. I like that call a lot. It's Mookie. Shocker. It's Mookie dropping some great knowledge in the chat. Actually 31st in the league at defending short area passes. That's interesting from Cleveland. But yeah, that's a really solid weighted opportunity. It's still 0.6. That's very good. That's very good. Still top 20, 20-ish. I like that quite a bit. I don't think that Terry McLaurin has fully, like the price has not caught up to him yet. 5,900 is too cheap. I like that one a lot.